Indus Water Treaty is not about water only. Regrettably, both India and Pakistan have undervalued it. Indus Water civilization is a common heritage of mankind. It's important not only to Pakistan that it was in this part of this world. In some cases, we have seen that they migrate to Karachi, where the women either became sex workers or they were divorced. Pakistan's population is about 230 million or so, maybe 40 million. By 2050, when we'll be 100 years old, this population is expected to double. And with the present rate of population increase and present rate as with business as usual, we will have another 110 or 20 million people below the poverty line, which means almost 250 million people by 2050 will be poor and below the poverty line.
Bunch of these houses were largely abandoned. It was actually a ghost village.
If they do that, they will have different set of priorities. Instead of widening roads in capital cities, they'll be widening streets, protecting naras in their own neighborhood.
Hello and welcome to Chaos Knowledge, where headlines meet depth and noise gives way to nuance. I'm your host, Usama Nizamani. There's another devastating cycle of monsoon that has gripped the region and Pakistan. To speak on this, I'm joined by a seasoned expert on climate change and sustainable development. My guest today is Ali Tauqeer Sheikh. Mr. Ali Tauqeer, welcome to Chaos Knowledge.
I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. I'm looking forward to a very stimulating conversation.
All right, Mr. Ali Tauqeer Sheikh, to start off our conversation, the first question that I have is, in the recent weeks, we have had over 268 people that have died as a result of the floods. Every year, city after city across Pakistan is submerged as a result of the monsoon floods. My question is, why are cities drowning in Pakistan? Is it because of climate change? Was there perhaps more to it?
There's a climate change answer and there's a more to an answer. I can give you both. The first is the climate change answer. As the temperature increases, the likelihood and incidence of heat waves increase. The more severe heat waves you have, more severe and frequent heat waves you have, there are chances that more ferocious and torrential rains you will have. There's a link between the two. There's a sequence. Increased temperature means that for each degree of increased temperature, there's 7% increase in the moisture in the clouds. Now, just a few months ago in April, we had heat waves, and in some areas the temperature was 7% higher, which means that there was much higher moisture in the air. That has to come down to the earth in shape of heavy downpour. So there is a link between the two. This is the climatic answer. And this also means something. Historically, for 70 years, we have prepared ourselves for riverine floods that emanates from Bay of Bengal, comes to the Arabian Sea via after traveling whole of India, Kashmir, and then Punjab, then it goes to the Sindh. Last a few years we have seen is that monsoon is changing its pattern because of monsoon changes and the temperature changes, something very strange has begun to happen. Non-riverine floods have become far more important in Pakistan. I just want to give you a few examples. There are 3 or 4 types of impacts of non-riverine floods. One is cloud outbursts, such as that we had in some areas of Pakistan, such as we had in Karachi a couple of years ago, such as we had upstream of Nowshera. Not all torrential rains are cloud outbursts. Cloud outburst essentially means that a water pours as if it's coming in a tunnel. But instead of recognizing inadequacy of our infrastructure or inadequacy inadequacy of our response mechanisms, we have started blaming, we meaning by policymakers have started blaming or relabeling, mislabeling every torrential rain as a cloud outburst, such as in river in areas surrounding Islamabad in recent weeks, such as in Chakwal in Punjab. That's one. So one is the cloud outbursts, and not all torrential rains are cloud outbursts. Their incidence has become more frequent. Second is urban flooding. When there is a heavy downpour in the urban areas, coupled with heat island, uh, there is no space for water to go. So the result is that the urban areas get flooded, particularly Pakistani urban areas, which is not truly a city but a sprawl towards low-lying areas where poor and the marginalized come and live. So, so inadequacy of infrastructure plus social disparities result in flooding. I want to give you another example. In Barani areas of Pakistan and the rain-fed areas of Pakistan, as well as salt range, these are not typical monsoon areas. We've seen that we have started having hailstorms there. We have started seeing having torrential rains here, and we see having even flakes of snow there. So there's a new area of flooding emerging in Pakistan, in Punjab, which was not typically monsoon area. I want to take you to Koh Suleiman. That's a range that divides parts of Punjab and Balochistan, KP, and Sindh. When because of climatic changes, the weather moves or shifts towards southwards from north, it is moving towards Sindh and Balochistan. So there are increasingly more torrential rains in Balochistan and on Koh Suleiman. These hill torrents give us, with much more frequency than ever before, very heavy flow of water. In areas of South Punjab, Dera Ghazi Khan, and in KP, Dera Ismail Khan and Rajanpur, and in the areas adjacent to Kirtan Range and Sindh. So these are new areas that are emerging because of floods. Now, of course, there is a climate change link here, but I want to talk for a few moments about non-climatic changes. Rivers have a right to life, just the way human beings have right to life. We need to have four cardinal principles uh, guiding our attitude towards rivers. First, respect gravity. Water will flow with gravity. Anything that comes on its way will get damaged or even destroyed. A lot of development in our country is happening downstream, obstructing the flow of water, oftentimes in the beds of water bodies and canals and nalas in urban areas. That's one. Where the gravity is not respected, it becomes more damaging for us. Second, just the way they have right to life, they also have right to passage. And right to passage means that their banks or their shoulders need to be respected. And the shoulders are defined historically over millennia. We have been narrowing them steadily. So many times it doesn't have any place to go. So I was recently looking at Nalalai, for example. The water was as high as the 24, 25 feet. It's not because the water was very high. It's just that the encroachment was so high, and the passage that we had constructed was concrete, making it a kind of bottleneck, and the water had no way to go except to overflow. We did exactly the same thing with Swan River. It was a majestic river with a huge shoulder, and if we had allowed that shoulder, kept it kept it intact, water level may not have been more than 2 or 3, 4 feet in all, maximum in some areas. So, in other words, we are not respecting their banks. Third cardinal principle in my mind is give dignity to the poor. Almost half of Pakistan's population is is poor. It lives below the poverty line, and they nowhere to go except to low-lying areas, except to river in flood prone areas. And they don't go there by choice. It's just that that's the only degraded land where land mafias would illegally have transactions and allow them to settle. And sometimes they will have links within the government that settlement to emerge as a formal community. And so many times you'll have even VOPTA connections there, uh, uh, um, schools, colleges, infrastructure of electricity, and so on and so forth. So, dignity means don't throw in areas of vulnerability. Respect their right to life and dignity as well. Think of alternative human settlements where they are not vulnerable to flood. And the last one that I want to mention in this regard, as a cardinal principle, is remember reconstruction is far more important, far more expensive than having a precautionary investments. We can protect a lot of our losses and damages because of floods if we invest in time. I just want to give you one example, and that's a very important example. Pakistan's population is about 230 million or so, maybe 40 million. By 2050, when we'll be 100 years old, this population is expected to double. And with the present rate of population increase and present rate as with business as usual, that means we will have another 110 of 20 million people below the poverty line, which means almost 250 million people by 2050 will be poor and below the poverty line, which essentially means where would they live? That's a fundamental question to ask. In all likelihood, unless we change our way of thinking, they'll be living in low-lying areas, and they'll be encroaching on rivers and nalas and canals. Um, and they will be becoming more and more vulnerable. That's one part. And just to conclude this thing, it's not just that they'll be living in low-lying areas, but also by with the business as usual, we will not invest in their resilient infrastructure like housing, like transportation, like energy. That means their vulnerability get enhanced. So there are both climatic and governance issues, and governance is the most critical bottlenecks. And please remember that the bottleneck is always at the neck of the bottle. It's never at the bottom. So we need to fix our governance from the top down.
And now let me draw your attention to another very important question. And this is about the fact that what we often see, or the conversations that we've actually come across, is that there have second order effects of the climate change itself. And they're not often spoken about. One of them certainly is that climate change is contributing to gender-based violence or violence against women. Let me ask you: is this really true? Because you're someone who's following these conversations, and how exactly is climate change really contributing to this very phenomenon?
Climate change is a threat multiplier. Those who are already marginalized, it will weaken them further. Be it a country, be it children or elderly or women. It contributes towards a process of disempowerment of women. When the resources become scarcer and when they become more threatened, the men tend to occupy them. When it comes to evacuation, the men would prefer livestock in case of flood than perhaps their women. So, a shorter answer to your question is that climate change as a threat multiplier marginalizes women more than others, and it threatens and impacts women far more than others. Be it in the case of drought, where the livestock has to be sold, or in case of floods, where there's no provision for women protection, and most of the supplies in case of relief are driven by men for the men, and it's not gender consideration. And therefore, people oftentimes complain that the data is not gender segregated. And that is one area we'll need to think and talk about.
So, what I will also try and do is, um, I'm sure if we can try and basically uh, pop up the news article that we have from Guardian, which basically suggests that a degree Celsius of rise can actually contribute to gender based violence, especially in regions such as South Asia, including in countries like India and Pakistan. Um, why do you think a rise in temperatures? I know it's not a rocket science, but to help our international audience understand, why is climate change really contributing to this phenomenon? And I would want you to actually throw in some anecdotes. If you have some stories, of course, keeping people's identities anonymous. Do you have any stories of people sharing their own plight of how climate change is affecting their lives?
I want to share many stories with you. We did a household survey in Tharparkar. It was a study of drought, that how it's affecting their lives and livelihoods. We found that after struggling for a few months during the drought, families end up selling their livestock, and women are the managers of livestock. Now, once the livestock is sold, women are disempowered. And when they are disempowered, they lose the right to go out. Um, because previously, at least as livestock managers, they were able to go out to fetch water or to fetch fuel wood or to graze the livestock. When the livestock is gone, women are stuck inside. And because they are not earning entity anymore for the family, men resorted to violence, and violence was such that they were forcing them to go and borrow money from their families. And in some cases, we have seen that they migrate to Karachi, where the women either became sex workers or they were divorced after intense domestic violence. So it's linked with all kinds of social problems. I want to give you another example. During one flood in 2022, a man had a choice, and he told his wife that you stay here, let me first protect the cows, the livestock, knowing fully well that he'll never come back. For him, the cow was not only milk and nutrition, but it was also an asset that he could sell. So it was a process of marginalization of women. So examples of this sort in both urban and rural settings. In Karachi during heat waves just a few months ago, we noticed that in several congested neighborhoods where the population density is very heavy and there is no electricity and there is load shedding, men could at least go outside in the street and spend the night there sitting and chatting with each other, whereas women were confined. There was there was no uh, escape route for them to go anywhere, so they were confined, plus cooking in heat and all that. These are only some examples, but these examples illustrate that gender based violence is propelled by climatic changes because of temperature increase, because of diminishing resources and livelihood options. The life of women becomes harder and harder.
Now, sir, let me draw your attention to another important question. And I'll share my own experience with you. A few months ago, I was actually visiting Thatta district, which happens to be a coastal district in Pakistan. Uh, we came across one community, and this particular community is very frequently, year after year, is affected by floods over there. And to my surprise, the government, along with a major donor, had actually helped them reconstruct their houses. But an interesting aspect was this, that much of these houses uh, were largely abandoned, and it was actually a ghost village. Many of these houses did not even have access to drinking water. So my question is, uh, why is it that the government cannot, or the policymakers really have not approached development of communities or houses with a sustainable approach?
This is an important question because it's what your question says. It highlights is essentially about vote of no confidence on top down policy making. Local communities will know where the pain point is. They'll know where the solutions lie. They know where the low-lying areas is. They know which areas are downgraded ecosystems and which are fertile areas. They know where the school should be and where water should be. These decisions cannot be made from the higher levels. So, if vulnerability is a local phenomena, the solutions have to be found locally. And problem in Pakistan's case is that our public sector development financing, which runs into billions of rupees annually, is top down, and it is giving us um, a whole uh, plethora of maladaptation and infrastructure that cannot resist, cannot respond to, or cannot tackle vulnerability, such as the building standards, such as the construction standards for roads, such as the location of power stations, such as location of schools and hospitals and resilient structure for those buildings, especially at the case of floods and other disasters. So the point here is local resilience is a local challenge. The solution has to be local, and that can come only through local institutions. And they need to be empowered, they need to be resourced. The more district management authorities are stronger, the stronger the local governments are, the stronger our responsibility.
So now let me draw your attention to another important question. And this time around, this has to do with the Indus water spilling. On one hand, we actually see in the region, Pakistan is actually having a hard time with recurring floods, especially in the monsoon season. And then, as a result of the India Pakistan crisis, we've seen India put the Indus Waters Treaty, which has sustained over decades, despite conflicts that have interrupted the two countries' bilateral history. We've seen the treaties sustain those difficult periods. But now we actually see the International Court of Arbitration, which has actually said that the treaty cannot be unilaterally put in abeyance. It will actually have to take both the countries to close the chapter on this treaty and perhaps come to an agreement to a new treaty. My question is, with India now deciding to basically at least scuttle the flow of waters in the winter season, and then you know with the issue of floods on the other hand in the monsoon season, how do you really approach the question of Pakistan's water woes being aggravated as a result of this double whammy?
The Indus Water Treaty is not about water only. Regrettably, both India and Pakistan have undervalued it. So many new issues that you alluded to, such as climatic changes and transboundary flooding and cloud outbursts, uh, they were not covered by the treaty because at the time, understanding about climate change was very rudimentary. But Article 7 of the Indus Water Treaty had the provision to raise new issues and undertake coordinated or joint research, and there was no limit to add new addendums or annexures to the treaty to strengthen it. And in fact, the sign of a robust document is that it adds new understanding and new science uh, by shared research and understanding. And therefore, both of these two countries were negligent on that part. They did not try explicitly to did not work to make the treaty a more robust one. But having said that, United States, UK, Canada, Australia, Germany invested more than India, invested more than $8 billion at the time to develop an infrastructure to make the treaty successful. Now, it was not just the water. It brought stability in our relationship with India, and it brought predictability of what's supplied to both sides, to India as well as to us. Now, it made green revolution successful in our part of the world. Without the canal structure that was funded by the treaty, $8 billion in today's prices, it wouldn't have been possible. So it was a ticket to um, and to food security. Otherwise, we in this part of the world would have starved to death. This country was not in good shape in terms of grain productivity. So, having given stability in relationship and predictability, the treaty assumed um, a very unique status of original public good. And because of its scale, it was equivalent to a global public good, one of those anchors that provided stability in the region, in a very volatile and a very large region which had more than a billion people to feed, and uh, more than 300 million uh, middle class. That was engine of growth for the world economy and continues to be so. So by emerging as a regional public good, it emerged as a model. It gave credence to World Bank that served as the custodian of this treaty, as a trustee of this treaty for 70 years. Built on the expertise that it developed based on this treaty, they engaged in water relations between several countries in many other parts of the world. So it served as a model for them, and they still have finances at their disposal, a trust fund that can fund this kind of research that I referred to earlier, with the consent of both countries or with support from both countries. Having said that, I want to take it further. Because in this food security that I referred to, is feeding more than 250 million in Pakistan and maybe another 100 million people in India, in Punjab, Haryana, Kashmir, and Rajasthan, and New Delhi that also gets water from Indus. Um, it has emerged as a custodian of Indus Water Treaty. Yeah, sorry, my apologies. It has emerged as the custodian of Indus Water Civilization. So, Indus Water Civilization is a common heritage of mankind. It's important not only to Pakistan that it was in this part of this world, but like other civilizations, like the Mayan civilizations or others, this is our heritage. Every living being in the world, no matter which part of the world you come from, you're proud of human heritage and you're a custodian of human heritage. So it is a collective responsibility. You may be sitting in the United States or in UK or Canada or in India or Pakistan, to protect Indus Valley civilization. And this treaty became an instrument to help us protect the Indus Valley civilization and its inheritors in agriculture, in trade, in culture, in our food and other heritage. So therefore, Indus Water Treaty is not only about water. It's about relations. It's about the common heritage of mankind. It's about the protection of ecosystems. It's about the protection of the ecology that we have. And therefore, both countries need to look at it differently. And I think even the world, particularly the United States and the World Bank, others who started this work, it's a work agenda unfinished. They were the visionary leaders who supported it. They have to continue with this sport so that there's no threat to Indus Valley civilization, to our regional common good.
And now let me draw your attention to another important question. And now this is about your recent write up, where you basically criticize a lot of these bodies, multiple bodies that are actually responsible for deliberating on climate change policy. Uh, and it appears that as per their mandated rules or laws, they're not convening as frequently as they should. Uh, could you sort of help us understand why is there such a lack of urgency on part of these bodies, despite the fact that Pakistan is actually among the leading, or perhaps I must say, among the most climate vulnerable countries?
The question is whether or not our policy is driven by science. If it is driven by science, then these institutions that I referred to will be stronger. Then we'll make sure that they are resourced, and we'll make sure that they meet frequently, and then we'll make sure that they enjoy the support from highest political leadership of this country. But if they're on the receiving end and the policies are driven um, uh, impulsively instead of science, then we will ignore these institutions. The institutions that you referred to um, are at least 8 bodies that I identified that are chaired by the Prime Minister, and it's an apex structure in Pakistan where every decision has to go to the Prime Minister for his approval. And there is a colonial type, old fashioned apex that we have that need to be reformed and changed so that Prime Minister's busy schedule may not always allow to meet and preside their meetings. So, and one way to do that is have a deputy chairman who could have administrative meetings and then brief the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister can come at whenever. So that's one point to remember. The second point that I wanted to highlight, in addition to science, is that we have so far defined climate change governance very narrowly, dealing with Pakistan Climate Change Council, knowing fully well that climate change in Pakistan is also a water issue. Therefore, National Water Council is also a climate change related institution that needs to be strengthened. And Pakistan Environmental Council, that has met only twice in 40 years, is not that Climate Change Act has superseded the Environmental Act. It still exists. So environment and climate and water go hand in hand. So does economic related councils, um, and science and technology related councils, as well as agriculture related councils such as PRC. So all these institutions, when I refer to them, they will help us break these silos to look at climate change in totality in terms of water security, economic security, food security, as well as science and technology, to propel our economy, to lift people above the poverty line, and have more robust economy that is attuned with the global trends in new sectors that are emerging, to give sustainability to our economies, a higher growth rate than the population growth rate, and very, very importantly, new trends that are emerging in artificial intelligence, in rare earth materials, and other sectors that are important. And critical to that would be entrepreneurship. So that this is a very young country, and we need to think that what kind of opportunities we can offer. And these apex body that I referred to are responsible for these things that I mentioned.
Now, Mr. Ali, my last question, and this is very important as well, is that in the recent weeks, we saw a lot of people getting swept by the floods and not withstanding the fact that there were some very successful attempts undertaken by the first responders. But looking at the state of affairs, how would you actually rate the capacity of the first responders? What is it exactly that you think needs to change in order to either improve the capacity or do things differently?
Three things. First is devolve powers to the local level government institutions, so that it doesn't have to fly from a distance. That's the first thing. And second thing is bring new instruments into operation, such as risk transfer and insurance, so that there is no cash disbursement and relief pressure on the government all the time.
And Mr. Ali, can I interrupt you over here? When you speak about local governance, do you think handing over responsibility uh, to district commissioners alone provides enough accountability for such bureaucrats to be answerable to local communities who are at the very receiving end of such calamities?
When I say local government, I'm essentially referring to elected government institutions at the local level. There are concerns that oftentimes we'll hear in Islamabad and in Karachi and Lahore that there are not sufficient capacities or there's not sufficient integrity there. Now, if I'm sitting on the resources, I'll suspect the capacities and integrity of others. But if we empower them, we'll see that the same questions about integrity and capacity can be raised about federal and provincial governments. So it's devolving the power, trusting the people to make their own decisions. So this is devolved. And if they do that, they will have different set of priorities. Instead of widening roads in capital cities, they'll be widening streets and nalas, protecting nalas in their own neighborhoods. This is the third thing we need to do.
And what would you say about other critical issues that need similar attention in terms of building up the capacity on the first responders front? Or do you think that would suffice itself?
First responders capacity is not additional technology, but additional training. better integration with communities, volunteer forces and battalions and brigades from the community levels, able bodied men and women who should be part of relief work, early warning systems, and running the relief operations. All that can be done by local people, as we see it happens more effectively at that level globally. We need to we need to do what the world has been doing and protecting its resources. We cannot over centralize this. These are the civilian institutions. Their capacity will be enhanced if we give them resources and time over a period of time. I'm fully confident they'll do an excellent job.
Mr. Ali Tauqeer Sheikh, on this note, I would like to thank you for joining us for this conversation. And to our audience, if you'd like to stay informed about similar podcasts in the future, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to our podcast. Thank you.